and against his father's will, had become alcoholic, and he actually died of alcohol poisoning. Now, there's Uncle Randall in the white shirt next to him, the economist who was very compassionate, visited Dad at the hospital. He's a little bit slighter than the others. He developed rheumatic fever when he was 12. And the doctors of the day said, we don't know how to treat this, so they ordered bed rest for a year. And Randall said, well, I didn't want to really miss school, so I decided that year to keep up my learning, I would read the Encyclopedia Britannica. So he started with A and then went to B, and that was his coping mechanism. There's Uncle Bob in the plaid shirt, first one out of the house to see his little brother on the sidewalk below. He was true to his word. He got his PhD in psychology at Princeton. He went back to USC for medical school, became a psychiatrist, helping people with pretty severe mental illness. All the boys in the family got migraine headaches starting in their teens, just like my sister and I, just like our boys. There's a big genetic loading there. And Bob's were the worst, but he was a doctor, so he began to prescribe himself pain relievers when he was in his 30s and 40s, and then he began injecting them, and then he got a blood clot and lost his leg and died of kidney failure, secondary to substance use. So there was really good things that happened in the family, and lots of substance abuse and mental illness, too. There's Dad in his white T-shirt, looking very robust, looking very Russell Crowe-ian, and a beautiful mind. He, in fact, knew John Nash as a grad student at Princeton when Nash was a mathematician, Dad was a philosopher. And then here are the two boys who are the products of my step-grandmother and grandfather, Uncles Harvey and Paul. Now, they're both in their 20s, and the other guys are in their 30s. They both have male pattern baldness. The other guys have full heads of dark hair. Baldness is a sex-linked trait, passed through the mother. Uncle Harvey, they found out he had perfect pitch at age 4. He became a concert musician, playing at Carnegie Hall and a professor of music. And his firstborn son, Harvey Jr., Chip, whom I got to know, he was a professor out at Nebraska. We lived in Ohio. We saw each other occasionally. Chip developed delusions when he was 15, developed schizoaffective disorder, a combination of bipolar illness and schizophrenia. He would come down from his episodes and still have a lot of thought disorder, and he shot himself at age 31. He thought life was too hard outside the mental hospital. Now, Uncle Paul, who's still alive down in Southern California, was a soloist with the LA Master Chorale for 48 years. I saw his final concert 2 springs ago, so musical ability and the baldness, he's the youngest. And his oldest son, Marshall, started Cal back in the late 60s. But Cal was on the quarter system then. He only made it through 1 quarter because he started attacking dogs in the street and getting very difficult ideas, had to be sent back to Southern California, and he's now in his 45th consecutive year of chronic schizophrenia. And Marshall lives in an apartment about the size of this podium to the wall, right in downtown Berkeley, with 3 teeth left and a history of on and off psychotropic medications, and is delusional every day. So on my grandfather and grandmother's side of the family, a lot of achievement, but mood, anxiety, and substance disorders. And on my step-grandmother's side of the family, musical ability and schizophrenia spectrum disorder, schizoaffective or chronic schizophrenia. Things don't always breed exactly true, but believe me, when I started to learn of what was going on with Dad, I was sitting in a lecture hall like you, and I wasn't taking notes. I was drawing little circles and squares and little genograms. Because who would be next? Probably me. My dad was a professor at Ohio State, very promising philosopher. He met my mom on a blind date. My mom was a grad student in history. They fell in love, decided to get married. And what did Dad tell Mom about his history when they were courting? I had a little trouble in high school and at Princeton. That was the sum total of the disclosure. And when did Mom start to learn? When she became pregnant with me and then pregnant with my sister. And during both pregnancies, Dad escalated into pretty severe mania. In fact, he was shipped back to California to a mental hospital. His Uncle Bob had flown to Columbus to get him out of Columbus State Hospital into a California hospital when my sister was born. We know that women with a history of depression, if they become pregnant and deliver, are fairly prone to postpartum depression. What's much less known is that when men, who either have the genetic vulnerability to mania or have had past manic episodes, when his partner becomes pregnant, he's at big risk for a manic episode. And it's harder to think of a strict hormonal theory the way it is for a woman. So is it the loss of sleep? Is it the existential fear of bringing a new life into the world? Dad had a lot of trouble coping with my mom's pregnancies. What happened during the 50s? Uncle Bob, who was in the know as a psychiatrist, got Dad a prescription in 1954 for a brand new medicine shipped over from France called Thorazine. So Dad was the 4th patient in the US, the 1st in the Midwest, to get this new medication for schizophrenia. And he stayed on Thorazine and Mellaril for 20 years because everybody thought he had schizophrenia. He got a number of ECT, shock therapies, electroconvulsive treatments, in the 50s because his episodes wouldn't calm down. These are not the evidence-based treatments for mania today. Mood stabilizers are. And of course, I've always wondered if he'd been diagnosed accurately earlier, maybe he wouldn't have ended up, as I'll tell you in a minute, the way he did in his last years of life. The doctors gave one other prescription to my dad, and there was no family therapy then, but once or twice when they did talk to Mom, they said one thing very clearly. Never tell your children about Virgil's episodes. You must have silence for the rest of their lives, otherwise it will destroy them. So the prescription was never talk about it, because the fact that your dad was in a mental hospital, if you knew that, would be psychologically devastating. So what did I think when Dad would disappear? I was in 3rd grade, he was gone for 12 months. I asked Mom, we just moved into a new house, I was trying to do well in school, I was trying to make the baseball team as a Cub Scout baseballer, and I said, Mom, where's Daddy? And she said, your father is resting in California, it's best if you ask no more questions. So that was our discussion for the year, and that's what the doctors ordered. What do kids do if they know something's going on? They're at risk somehow, or they know family's arguing, or there's something not so good in the house, but are told nothing about it. What's the kid's natural inclination? Internalize. It must be my fault. I'm not a good enough kid. That's why my parents are arguing. Maybe if I'd been a better son, Dad would have stayed. Better to internalize. It's a terrible cost to your self-image. Because then at least you can control it. Probably better psychologically than thinking the world is just a kind of random bad place. When did I actually hear what happened? I went off to college, went off to Harvard, wanted to get pretty far, didn't want to go all the way to the West Coast, wanted to get as far from Ohio as I could in many ways. I came back for my first spring break, and Dad said, son, perhaps we should have a little time in my study. I should perhaps tell you a few incidents in my life. So I just turned 18, Dad closed the door to his study, and we had our first half-hour talk of many we had over the next 25 years, in which he told me what some of the things I'm telling you, and I knew it had to be something pretty bad to explain all that silence and all those absences. But at the same time, it was a revelation. What did I feel? Well, it's schizophrenia. In fact, he told me his diagnosis. And even when I was in college, back in the dark ages, the geneticists knew one thing: schizophrenia is heritable. So when did I really think about this? Trying to go to sleep at night, sitting in lecture hall, I would draw the diagrams and figure out, now when will my first symptoms be showing up? If you're in silence and in the dark and you've internalized, you also start to predict doom for yourself. Because who was I telling about what my dad was telling me about? My roommates? My girlfriends? Are you kidding? Last thing I'd ever do. So silence breeds silence breeds silence. Finally, I was getting out of college. I'd asked professors who weren't too helpful, did some reading, and I thought to myself, I think my dad doesn't have schizophrenia. He's got this thing called manic depression or bipolar illness. And I helped get him diagnosed properly, and my dad started on lithium 40 years too late. It helped him be episode-free for a few years. And oh, by the way, I had become interested in clinical psychology. What a shock, right? This is what people do who are trying to work through these conflicts. And in college, I think I really identified with kids who didn't really have a lot of guidance. So I was a big brother and a tutor and a mentor, and I worked at a mental health center, taught in a prison. I got a lot of experience trying to give back something and help form some idea of child mental health and family communication. Here's a photograph. I wrote a book on my dad's life a few years ago, and we're rewriting it completely right now. We're on spring break in Florida, back in the 50s, a period when Dad was well. And what are we doing? What game are we playing? Shuffleboard. What do you do in spring break? You play shuffleboard. So many times we're just great, and other times Dad would simply be gone with no communication. Here's another photograph. I got my PhD from UCLA. That's actually me with a mustache and dark hair. And we're outside Santa Barbara at El Capitan Beach. And here's Dad in his 60s, full head of dark hair. Not everything is genetic. Developed a little bit of a paunch from the lithium he was using at that time to help him with his mood states. And then here's 5.5 years later when I got a visiting job up here at Berkeley at Stimson Beach. You can tell Dad's lost 25 to 30 pounds. He started a little stoop, looks much older. And in his last years of life, he developed a Parkinson-like illness. Only one other case of Parkinson that I know of in our family, and I really have to wonder if all those years on the wrong medicines and all of those shock treatments he got might have propelled some neurological decline. Probably will absolutely never know. The last visit I had with my dad when he was still in good mental capacity, about 6 months before he died, I asked his permission to start to talk about his life in lectures I gave and perhaps write a book or more about it, and he said, by all means, I've lived in a lot of silence. It was around that time he told me once, too, that he'd often wished he'd had cancer. And the first time he said this, I thought, boy, is Dad having an episode? That's pretty, what's he talking about? And he said, but son, don't you understand? Cancer is a physical illness. It's a real illness. All I've had is a mental illness. Well, I think of the term philosophically. A mental illness means it's just in your mind. Maybe I've just imagined my symptoms. Maybe nothing ever really bad happened to me, but I just imagined it. So if you don't have accurate diagnosis and if you don't do the right kinds of education, mental illness receives a lot of stigma. Here's my dad, a bright philosopher, believing that he brought it all on himself. He also told me in his latter years that every time he would go to a mental hospital, it felt a whole lot like his stepmother, asking him to wait to receive punishments. It felt very similar. The abuse in the mental hospital, the abuse he got earlier on. So there was a big mental link there. Now, I'm going to skip over that, and we don't have much time left. What are 6 things we might take away from this? If you didn't believe it before, if I didn't believe it, I lived through it. Mental illness is devastating. There's still people who say it's just made-up symptoms. We don't have a blood test or a brain scan. Mental illness is real, despite the Scientologists. I've mentioned a couple of times the accuracy of diagnosis. Oftentimes I thought, what's the matter with those doctors back at Norwalk Hospital in the 30s? Why didn't they get it right? Why didn't they know? There was one doctor, I read some of the reports, who thought Dad had manic depressive psychosis. But then I would think, what did it matter? He could have been diagnosed with OCD or anorexia. His only treatment was going to be being tied to his bed anyway. Diagnosis matters if it can predict specific treatment, and if you don't have specific treatments, diagnosis is nice for the record books, but now that we've got both medicines and therapies that have a fighting chance of putting a real dent in mental illness, diagnosis matters. Talk about risk factors, loss of his mother, abusive treatment, silence all around, but also protective factors. Dad was a pretty smart guy, always had a good sense of humor, always was very religious despite his scientific and philosophical beliefs, always thought that there must have been some creator for our universe and the multiverses around us. And you have to think, what are the factors that help some people be a good dad? When I was a boy and I was in trouble, Mom held the family together, but Dad was the one I went to for emotional support because he kind of got it. And of course, the stereotype is if you have bipolar disorder, you can't be a parent at all. So what are the factors that helped him? I think he was pretty sensitive to his son. I was hoping that maybe people might have been more sensitive to him way back. What should you tell kids if their parent is seriously depressed or has bipolar disorder? Bill Beardsley, the child psychiatrist at Harvard, has devised a form of family therapy where the main goal, and this is a family therapy where one or both of the parents has depression or bipolar disorder, the parents need medicine and their own individual treatment. The goal of the family therapy is to get the parents to talk to their kids about what's going on with Mom or Dad. And the parents resist and say, I don't want to do this, it's too shameful. If you do 4 months of this therapy and include the kids in the conversation, 4 years later, the kid's own risk of having a mood disorder is cut in half. So part of the transmission of mood disorders is genetic, and part of it is silence. If you can open up and have kids not internalize, it helps prevent their own development of mood disorders. And I hope, again, that through this story and many others, there's a lot of books, a lot of films, still sensational, better, more accurate every year, about people with mental disorders and family members who bear the brunt. If we can humanize and tell the real stories, I think that's most of the battle. What are most stories of mental illness these days? John Nash, A Beautiful Mind, wins the Nobel Prize, or you're on the streets, or you're a mass murderer. There isn't much in between. There isn't enough of the everyday stories of struggle and coping that's what humanized breast cancer, that's what humanized many other formerly stigmatized illnesses, and that's the goal. So we've got just a couple of minutes, questions, reactions, because I wanted to get some discussion if we could. Right here. I missed the coping, right. So how did I cope? In college, I had a hard time. College is not the most carefree time in the world. Yeah, I did well at Harvard, I got good grades, and played intramural sports, and worried like heck all night, some nights. Kind of tortured myself, wondering if the next symptom might be schizophrenia, maybe bipolar disorder. I've had depression. Most people have. I've probably got, this is the wrong model. Let's say it takes 30 different genes in a certain allelic configuration to provide risk for bipolar disorder. I've probably got 10. I've got a lot of energy. I like to do a lot of stuff. I can go on little surges. But lacking the next 20, I've never had a severely psychotic episode. But have I ever stopped worrying? Not really. Probably never goes away. Right here.
What do you think your own biggest protective factors were?
Geez, my own protective factors. Finally, at age 18, my first spring break, I learned the truth. I think if it had been silent a lot longer, I don't know what would have happened, because I think I would have internalized even more. Second, maybe having a little bit of the genetic loading for bipolar disorder gives you some energy, gives you some drive, right? Why would bipolar disorder still exist in the gene pool? Who are the most successful people on the planet? Usually the relatives of people with bipolar disorder. We talked about that. So probably my genetic loading is both a risk and a protective factor. And finally, later in life, talking about it with partners and friends and therapists, that's been the biggest protective factor of all. Let's go to somebody else right here.
How would you recommend going about telling children that they
Yeah, so what do you tell kids? So in Beardsley's form of family therapy, this is a flexible family therapy. The kids are seen, the parents, conjoin everybody together. About halfway through, the kids are sent to the playroom, and the therapist says, okay, now we embark upon the form. We're going on to session, whatever it is. Now we start to figure out what to tell your kids. And the parents say, what the hell are you talking about? I would never do that. Well, remember, that was the contract you signed. There's no formula. Maybe for a 7-year-old boy versus a 13-year-old girl, you make very concrete mom's drinking problems, or dad's absences, or why people get so crabby and irritable at the house. It doesn't matter what you say, but you say something that's the truth, and it's probably individualized for each family. The kid will get it that the truth is being spoken. I think that's the essence of it. So there's no script or manual to tell you what to say, but the fact is you've got to work through saying something. All right, it's time. Thanks a lot. Thanks.